I was going to ask a question, but I realize it's far more interesting to get all you guys to ask a question. So, but however, before you guys ask the question, the question I was going to ask, which has already been answered, is around the question of cultural appropriation. What is cultural appropriation and what is not cultural appropriation? And I think you answered it with this protocols, research through conversation, and building relationships with communities. I'm just, yes, Monique.
I just want to add something. Asking permission is really, really important. I mean, I tell stories that were my family's stories, and they're stories that I heard all my life, but maybe I wasn't born yet. I still had to ask my family permission to tell those stories, you know? And I got the permission, but I mean, it's still asking, and giving something in exchange is really, really important part of what we mean by protocols. So.
I have so many conversations with Mexican scholars about this, about if indigenous people in Mexico, they also follow protocols or they did it in the past. And I have been talking with people also who are in the tradition. Like when I say Mojica tradition, I mean the dancers and people who follow this. And it's very controversial, but actually Mojica people, they were really stealing and taking lots of things, not just land, because they originally they were not from Mexico City area. They came from the north, So they arrived, and they were warriors, and it was a very violent culture. They conquered that part of Latin America, that part of Mesoamerica, that part of Mexico, or that part of what is now Mexico City by stealing, actually, land, culture, aspects, language. Yeah. So they also... They did something, and I've been talking with many people around that, because there is a legacy that we also carry as Mexicans, as indigenous Mexicans, that we have that in our bones. It's right here, no? And we saw it every day now with the violence that Mexico still carrying, no? Like it's. I mean, I have also faced in my own life lots of violence, as we know, as fellow Mexicans, like other Mexicans who are here, we know what violence is in Mexico, no? We live it that every day, and we know other people in Colombia and Venezuela and other parts, you name it, no? But especially in Mexico, there is something there. So I always question that part of if we follow protocols properly, and if we still carry that thing about like stealing, not just things, physical things, no, like cultural things, like it's part of that legacy. I think so. We have a great opportunity to break down that part and to be more conscious when we work with material or stories, traditional stories, or even symbols, no? Textiles, Now there is everywhere that, like Mexican communities, indigenous communities in Oaxaca, they're fighting for the rights to be recognized as an artist, and to, people to have this beautiful design that was made that carries history and knowledge, to be respected in that way. I think so we have lots of work to do. Lots of work to do as a human beings, as an artist. And I always go back to me, and I said, this is the one who's responsible for your own actions, no?
Can you talk a bit more, Carlos, about that role that you were playing, where somebody went up to you and said, I'm paraphrasing now, you're not allowed to play that role because you are not of our community? Can you expand more about your response to that and why you felt that it was okay for you to play that role?
That was really, as I said before, the company did all this long protocol to be able to tell the story. No, like it was not my responsibility, not just mine. It was the artistic director, the company who followed all this protocol. They went to the community. They asked the community, and the community decided who was the person responsible to tell the story directly to us. And they send a list of all the action that they request to be followed. And the company and that community, they sign like an agreement about, okay, we are going to follow the protocol as you asking. So we have a cultural advisor from this community who came all the way to Toronto, first of all, to meet, to share food, no, and to shake hands, make an agreement in terms of, okay, this is the story as I hear it from my people. And we were asked not to record there, just to listen. Listen the story, and later on we have a conversation about, here are the teachings of this story. The story belongs to our community. We agree that the company is going to make like a contemporary version for the stage, or a stage version, no? And we ask, okay, this is the cast, or the artistic director asked the community, this is the cast that we are followed to do it. Of course, we performed once or twice in that community, I remember really well. Car cross, no? Close to Yukon territory, like right there, like it's really up there in the north. So, but when we went to this community in BC, northern BC, and we have this, and I remember this man looked at me really into my eyes, and he said, you don't have the right to do this. So he was doing the Q&A, so we agreed to meet after, we have a conversation. I hear him really well, and he said to me, well, I don't want to see my grandfather or someone who looks like me doing this. And I tell him, why? By doing this, your culture and your family and part of this story has been here for so many audiences across Canada. So people know more about your culture. And I explained to him all the things that we did. I make a report to the company because he claiming I want to hear from the artistic director why. So they set up a meeting, a phone meeting. They have a conversation, and later on he sent an email, really nice email, saying like, at the beginning it was the first time that he saw on a stage someone, an actor, playing someone from their own culture. So for him it was striking. It was something like, it was not usual. And we understood that. We understood that because, yeah, when you go to communities, to reservations, to small towns, and you go to the schools or to the gyms or to the community centers of the theaters, and you're representing your own self in some way, it's hard. And it's going to be even harder when it's not someone from your community who's representing that. Of course, we understand that. We explained to them that we did it following protocols and we did it with respect. And the company followed a couple emails, no, like checking that it was proper. I asked him very straight questions about, it's about what is the thing that evoked you the most? And he said to me, well, I never saw a play about my own culture. I want to see it that in the most beautiful way. And for me, I took that as a big responsibility, and I say, I promise to you that I'm going to do it the best that I can. The best that I can. No? So I checked with some of my fellow Indigenous artists, so I said, this is happening to me, what I need to do, no? Personally, no? I follow my protocols, I went with the company, I request them to take responsibility for that. They did it. We gave a response to them or to this person specifically, and he responded to us, and we went into let's say, like an agreement. I think so. It could be really bad if I was not aware of following protocols. No, so
Each situation is different, because there's also this thing. I don't know if you ever. Each situation is different. There isn't like one rule that's going to carry you all the way through. And there's also this thing. I don't know if you ever heard the term pan-Indianism, right? So that's something that I don't know when it started. Probably Hollywood. Any Indian will do, So it's just that in Hollywood, the movie might be drums along the Mohawk, but they've got teepees, or everybody had a totem pole, like those kinds of things that just that any Indian will do. And I think those of us who made our living by playing Indian, that was something that we kind of had to swallow and do. And it swung back, at least I hope it's swinging back, to having respect for the specificity to each culture that you're working with. Yeah.
There's two parts to that too, because there's within that being a part of the community, and then the little nuances or the specificity with regards to each nation and things. But then cultural appropriation is a much bigger context. We can easily identify when it's out there in the public eye, right, with bigger things. I want to give a small story that I feel I can share. Monica, you know this, and those of us from Te Toronto would know this as well, some of that. I was called to sit as witness during a council, an elder council, for this one very prominent theater artist in Toronto, who held a lot of space both in the Indigenous circles and social justice circles. And I was affected because I was brought in all three. Actually, the very first question that really fucked with me with regards to indigeneity was when this artist asked me on camera during a Black Lives Matter movement, what is my relationship to indigeneity? It was actually that question that really messed with me, that got me going there. So when I went and sat as a witness for this council meeting, I saw the repercussions of what happens when, one, you don't respect protocol, and two, when you blatantly lie and appropriate and then benefit off of that.
They're at it again.
I didn't know. Yeah.
They're back.
Fuck. So, I say that with as much heart and compassion that I can possibly muster, because to actually be witness of what happens in a room to community, only you could know if you're lying, really, even to yourself. And when community comes knocking, that's the thing. Like I said, I rep the Indigenous card, I rep that. If I fuck up, and I mean in the way that, I don't think, if I fuck up, my community is going to hold me accountable. And to have held witness as to what happened to this individual, and to be called back, it's, they, not only professionally have they had to back away from things, but then also their chosen family was the Indigenous, was the social, they haven't been around in any aspect. It is a very serious thing. So again, I with the cultural appropriation, community is going to keep you in check, and I hope everyone in this room at least stays truthful to yourself, right?
That's body theft. Yeah, it's body theft. I think it's a very serious thing, and I get it that we don't always know. I know that I'm in a privileged position to be able to tell generations back who my people are, on all sides. Not everyone can do that, because if you understand how colonialism works, we know what those ruptures are, and I don't think that's what we're talking about. It's knowingly lying, and I think, a lot of that is complicated by sometimes, and this has happened, quite a bit, there are people from Latin America who are mixed blood, had no connection to an indigenous community, who maybe the first time in their lives that they realized they weren't white was immigrating to the US or Canada. And all of a sudden they're, holy, what do you mean I'm not white? And because people that look like us, you know. I have a very close friend, one of my oldest friends in Canada, who, when she landed as a 14-year-old refugee from Chile in Winnipeg, her first day at school, she had a long braid, and she was called a squaw. It was the first time that it occurred to her, whoa, what's going on here? And she's spent, I mean, she's in her 50s now, and she's spent all those years trying to get her family to tell her, what are we? And of course, they don't want anything to do with the indigenous part. You know, she says, but what about my nose? So it's, I think it's a complex thing, you know, that I had one of the best roommates I ever had in my single mother years was this young Chilean man who was AWOL from the army. And every time he met another one of my native friends, he'd say, you look Chilean. Are you sure you're not Chilean? I said, you look like us. That's what it is. So it was, but it would happen every single time. So it was, I think it's ongoing, and it's something that needs to be really, really treated with care. Yeah.
Okay, so we have about 12 minutes. It would be great if people from the floor have questions. I do want to say that if you identify as Indigenous, I would like you to be first up to ask questions before anybody else does.
My name is Renee Morso. I'm Korean Soto from Manitoba, and have made my home here on Coast Salish shores of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish for the last 35 years. And so I've had the honor of witnessing a lot of the ceremonies and protocols here. And as an artist that's from different place, what I bring here are my songs and my stories and my skills in telling community-engaged art. So my question is for you, Monique, about if you can describe a bit further about land and dramaturgy.
Well, this is my ongoing, most exciting part of, I think that's how I'm going to spend the last third of my life, is in exploring that. I got very frustrated with things like the well-made play and dramaturgical questions like, what's your character's through line and who is your audience, and those things that are accepted as the way that things must be done. And when I set out to write Chocolate Woman Dreams the Milky Way, which was about me trying to connect myself back to Kunayala, it was that journey, and I wrote it at a time that was really critical. It was a time of great personal crisis, and I knew that piece had to save my life. These designs on molas encapsulate our entire cosmovision. They are layered like the layers of Kuna reality. They have the duality and repetition. The duality is, as you were saying, Joe, the duality is always in honor of Baba Nana, which is Father Mother, which is the creator, which is neither male nor female. Everything honors that. The abstraction, multidimensionality, and metaphor, that those four principles that are in Kuna art, Kuna women's art, go through all of Kuna culture. And somewhere in there, I realized that there are many, many models for dramaturgy in indigenous cultures. in weavings, in pottery, in wampum belts, in bark scrolls, in tattoos, that these designs were originally these. And that's a whole other story. But I no longer wanted to try to in any way follow Eurocentric, Anglo-Eurocentric theater. I wanted to put Indigenous theater in the center of my practice. So it's not window dressing, it's not Shakespeare in buckskin and feathers anymore. Thank you very much, never again. But I found that I was able to do that I used as my model this literary narrative. I used as my model this story structure in the ways that Kuna chanters notate healing chants. And it goes like this, and it's never ending. It's like a serpent. Those iconic forms, whether they are tattoo designs, whether they are pottery etchings, whether they are tattoos, whether they are mound complexes, which is the second show that I created using the premise of Indigenous dramaturgy from land, was mound complexes, effigy mounds that are not only on land, but to paraphrase Chadwick Allen, who's a Chickasaw scholar, they are made through the medium of earth itself. That those things are very concentrated, encoded systems of transferring knowledge. And that one iconic form, if you embody that iconic form, has the power to unravel some of the colonial violence that is in our bodies. So the premise that I've been working on now for the past over 20 years is that as long as the land is there, the stories are accessible. So how, as a creator of theater and performance, do you create a body connected in kinship ways, connected in all the directions? How do you create a body that is the best receptor that we can have? And what I've been working with is land literacy and body and movement literacy, being able to read what's on the land, being able to read what's in the body, and that those petroglyphs and pictographs and symbols, those iconic forms, are the intersection between those things. And how do I animate and activate those things in my body, privileging the body and the body's connection to come at the end with text. So the text is the last thing that comes in my way of working like that. So that's what I've been doing. I'm in the middle of it.
How do you work with designers or with people that are not necessarily performers, but people like me who work with video and projections and stuff? And I'm not by any means indigenous. I cannot trace. I know I have indigenous blood, obviously, because I'm Mexican, but I cannot trace anything back. So anyway, that's kind of a problem.
When I work with designers and other creators, I always step into the room by respecting them as a human beings and to include them as a human beings, as creators, as people who has ideas, who can embrace, and I always try them to fall in love with my ideas. Because otherwise, I don't want them to escape from the room saying, no, I don't want to work with you. I want them to support the work and to make it even better. So I brought an idea, and most of the time, these beautiful designers, they embrace that idea and they make it much better. That's what I learned. I'm coming from my background as a mover. No? I call myself a danzante, so I always embrace that from there. Movement for me. Movement is very important for me. and everything moves. No, your ideas moves. One day I have one idea, but the other day I want that idea to stay there and to move. And I want to hear the designers a lot. I want to work with the creators, like I'm working with her. So I want to hear what are the needs. What are the needs from the choreography, from the light, no, from the lighting designer, from the shapes. And sometimes we are lucky to have those conversations. But most of the time, because the way how we create in Canada, which is always, so hard to get it. So we need to start making those conversations way before. Yesterday, I have a beautiful conversation with Mercedes about what's the next step. No? And in my brain, I was, we are going to do another workshop like in Canada. And she said, no, I'm thinking also we need to do other stage and keep researching, keep playing, keep opening. And until now that I'm encounter her again, I say, thank you for the opportunity, because the last time that we met, actually, now I can go back and see what we did and say, we really reached a lot of work by having these amazing conversations, by giving us opportunities to establish that relationship of respect as humans, as an artist. So I want to invite everyone to break down that system, that this way of producing work is just the director or a person who has just the right to say yes or no to everything.
The departments.
Yes, the departments, all that kind of stuff. And look into each other more like human beings, people that create work to send a message to audiences. To reflect ourselves. When the audience is coming to see our show, what I want to see is another human being be reflected in what I'm doing on the stage, what I'm saying on the stage. So it's our responsibility to embrace more that idea and not just to follow rules in some ways, which are okay, but sometimes are made to putting people in the box again.
Also, we hardly have any Indigenous designers in any way. There's like less than a handful, so that we're always in that position of translating and working. I was bringing visual artists and installation artists into working in Chocolate Woman Dreams the Milky Way. It worked because it was a Kuna visual artist. The early stages of what became AZM, the alchemy of infrequent, it didn't work so well. So it's the final product. I went with someone who was a scenic designer, and we don't have the bridge yet.
That's the perfect word to finish off on. Thank you so much. Monique Mojica, Carlos Rivera, Joe Recinos, thank you so much. Your generosity is incredible. Thank you. Thank you.